Another thing that I do want to also mention is, personally for Bante Slay, we are looking to turn our culinary program into a catering service. And so if there's any like business people out there who can support us in like making this become an alternative to sexual exploitation, we would definitely love your support and like looking at the legality and the process of doing that as well. And then also, you know, like what Nola said, mentorship. I think it's so important for young women to be engaged with folks who live a whole different world, so that they can see that different world. Because a lot of times they interact just within folks in Oakland and within their neighborhood, and so they don't get to go to like these fancy shows or, you know, like take a trip to the beach or whatever it is, you know. And I think having that mentorship, it opens up opportunities for these young women. Just one thing that I thought of today when I was talking to Rich was that, you know, a lot of times the young women, they feel that school is something that doesn't speak to them. So what do we do with that? You know, like if we are folks who have some kind of money where we can provide like maybe a field trip or maybe some kind of service for the young women to feel more engaged in school, because you know, the reality is that I don't know if it's just OUSD or if it's a lot of public schools, but you're always hustling to get like the high achievers to go to college, right? And you forget about those who are struggling. And so the ones that are struggling, they're further marginalized. And then they get into this game of like, what do I do with myself? I'm not even graduating. I don't have a degree. I don't have a diploma. I can't get a job, you know? And so like it goes back into that cycle. And like we have to really look at what can we do to further engage young people into schools and make them feel empowered that this is a way out as well. I know people say education is not for everybody. I do believe that when it comes to like poverty, education is the only way out.
Thank you. I just have to say, we are truly fortunate in having women like this in fighting the battle. We really are. We're going to now move to the question and answer session, and I'm going to start just by saying, if you would, one at a time, give your website addresses so people can write those down real quickly.
Yes, so Heat Watch is www.heat-watch.com. I'm sorry, .org.
You all probably know our website, but it's www.oaklandpolice.com. And my personal, my email at OP is hjoshi, HJOSHI@oaklandnet.com.
Our website is www.missssey.org.
Ours is www.banteaysrei.org.
Thank you.
I also have some materials on the back table from our organization, so when folks are leaving, if they want to grab materials, those are there as well.
All right, thank you. So first question for the DA's office. How many cases of human trafficking is or has your office prosecuted? And the second part is the same question for pimps, johns. How many are being jailed?
So I'm going to refer to some of the material here because that's actually the part of the unit that I do not specifically work. I can tell you that of the human trafficking cases in the state of California, and this was from January 2006 to August of 2013, that Alameda County prosecuted 46% of all human trafficking cases in the state. From that time period that I've stated, we had 325 defendants charged. There were 227 defendants who were convicted. 11 of those, in addition to that, 11 were probation or parole violations, And so we had a total of 238 successful prosecutions. And our office is very aggressive about prosecuting the exploiters. There's currently a case that my coworker Laura Pasalia is prosecuting. It's a murder case because a young lady who was 19 was trying to leave her pimp, and the pimp, who I believe is in his early 20s, murdered her. Just kind of adding on to what the question is, the pimps are extremely aggressive and very violent. They will not hesitate to seriously hurt or to murder the young ladies. One training I went to indicated that if a pimp has 4 girls, that he or she, because pimps can be males or females, obviously, can make about $700,000 a year tax-free. So that's clearly a lot of money, and these folks will go to any degree to assure that the girls stay and work for them, even if that amounts to murdering them.
Thank you. The second question is for OPD. Are there any undercover operations going on at any major hotels during major league games happening at the Coliseum? And secondly, are known pimps, Johns being targeted?
Great question, whoever's question that was, and that's good thinking. So the stats definitely show that anytime that there's any major league games going on, or even like a seminar coming into town that is going to have a large group of men here without their wives, so male-dominated professions coming to town and things of that nature are definitely a time where we really need to be running operations. And most oftentimes during those events, we're partnering with the FBI and we are running undercover operations. Sorry, what was the second part about Johns and pimps?
Second one, the same, how many cases? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Intelligence at OPD is always focused mainly on pimps. The John issue is an issue that we could talk about for hours, and I really think that it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and that is policy and legislative changes. Because right now, there's really no oomph behind the law when it comes to Johns. I mean, there really isn't. What we have done at OPD is changed our practices, because if you look at police all over the country and even in Oakland, recent practices, just as recent as a couple of years ago, would be that if there was an operation and a John and a working girl were both caught together, the girl would go to jail and he would get a citation for the same crime, for the same attempted prostitution crime. So that has ended. So if a John is caught attempting to solicit sex from either an undercover or an actual working girl, then he is going to go to jail. However, when we know that they have so much to lose because a large majority of them are established men who in other areas of society we would look at them and think that they're regular functioning and even sometimes pillars of the community, they have a lot to lose, but they don't really lose a lot when all we do is take them to jail and then give them a notice to appear in court, and then they go to court or pay a fine or get on probation or get a slap on the wrist. I mean, that's really not holding them accountable. And so the large majority of our investigative focus is on pimps. The Alameda DA's office has shown, their statistics, 46% of the cases in all of the state of California, and that's more than like LA County and Sacramento County combined. So we're very, very focused, and probably most of those cases are coming from OPD, but we're very, very focused on addressing the issue. But we have to work within the confines of the law, and unfortunately, when it comes to Johns, there's just not a lot there.
Thank you. The next question is, you can decide which one of these you want to take. Is there anyone from OUSD here, Oakland Unified School District? As a parent of OUSD students, one girl, one boy, I'm very concerned about the immediate need for education of students, faculty, and staff, and community. What's happening in this area, particularly if we're at an epidemic level with this issue?
So the Oakland Unified School District did develop a sexually exploited minors task force, and it's led by Sandra Simmons. And they meet on a monthly basis to discuss through this task force, they did put on some training. about a year ago where they trained across the district. They brought folks to the Oakland Aquatic Center and had West Coast Children's Clinic do some in-depth training with the mental health clinicians and therapists throughout the schools. And then there was a broader training done with staff. In my opinion, has there been enough training done with OUSD? No, there definitely needs to be a lot more. But there has been some training done across the district, and we also, as an organization, MISI responds to training requests from individual school sites all the time, training either teachers or coming to actually talk to groups of students and do prevention workshops. And I know that other organizations that do this work, Baywar, West Coast, y'all probably do too, they also go into schools and do the same kind of education. So it is happening in the schools, but not across district. As I said, Love Never Fails has developed a curriculum, that's a prevention curriculum that they want to do across district, and it's already, the district has agreed for them to do it, so that all 7th graders, because the average age of entry is 12. So if we wait till high school, we're way too late. So all 7th graders will get this curriculum, and trust me, it's critical in the city of Oakland. Like, for us not to have a prevention curriculum in our school district right now, at the rate that children are being sex trafficked in this city, it's a crime. Like, these children are being arrested, but the crime, you know, that right now is against them, and it's not by law enforcement, it's by all of us who are sitting back and allowing, you know, this to happen. And so all Love Never Fails needs is the funding. So once they secure that funding, everything else has been solidified by the city council, by everything, and all they have to do is begin to implement the education. But Sandra Simmons would be a contact, as well as Barbara McClennan, I believe was her last name, in terms of the task force and what's going on with OUSD.
And just to add to that, our office is also going to start working on a curriculum. In fact, I have a meeting next Friday. I'm working with some folks from my office. I know that Love Never Fails is targeting 7th grade, but I'd like to go even as young as 6th grade on up. And I think it would be helpful, in my opinion, if there was mandatory training for all OUSD staff. I think it should be mandatory, if it's not already, because I think that they are also the eyes and ears who deal a lot with kids, who hear things in the hallway, who hear things in the classroom, and they can also be good resources in terms of providing support for children who are already being exploited, as well as those who may be at risk.
And another way you can help in that area is with the training that she's speaking of. Years back, we looked at that and wanting to build that onto their mandatory annual child abuse training. Well, in doing that, and I did a scan of school districts across the state, what we discovered is that training for them annually was equating to them being handed a brochure. So there was nothing for us to build on to. So I was able to work with some teachers across the state and some districts where they got permission from their district to like volunteer as a teacher to, you know, they got information from our organization and they customized it to, you know, the schools, and they did trainings that were voluntary for teachers or administrators to come to. Just as a supplement, but what we found is that it would be necessary first to advocate that the teachers are getting appropriate annual child abuse training, because this is a form of child abuse, and then we can build onto that. If they can't identify the signs of child abuse, and 70 to 90% of children who are sex trafficked or sexually abused in earlier childhood, 99% of Missy's clients, then you know how will we prevent this issue. We won't prevent it by just training teachers on this if they can't even identify early childhood sexual abuse, when there's a direct correlation between early childhood sexual abuse and children who are sex trafficked. Children who are sex trafficked, so children who are sexually abused are 28 times more likely to be arrested at some point in their life as a prostitute. And that doesn't equate to the number of kids who are sex trafficked, just the ones who are arrested at some point in their life. 28 times more likely those who suffer sexual abuse.
Just to add a little bit, regarding the protocol that I mentioned earlier, Asian Health Services and Native American Health Center, we are pushing the district to adopt it as a district-wide protocol. So whoever asked that question, I would also check the school to see if that's a protocol that is already implemented at the schools that your children are going to.
Thank you. Next question is, what is the disposition of the business community with respect to child prostitution, and would a citywide business group or NCPC-like organization of business people be of help?
Yeah, I mean, for the second part of the question, yeah, they can most definitely be of help in a lot of different ways. But I think, you know, I mean, I've experienced some mixed responses. I've experienced some businesses that really want to help, and I've had businesses already give girls opportunities at employment and training and different things. So that's been really refreshing. Especially this summer when we were placing a lot of girls in different programs, there was a great response from many small businesses and even, medium and larger size businesses in the city, so that was great. I also feel like there's a lot of businesses that have really exploited this. So now they sell shirts that say, pimp this out, and on International Boulevard, where there used to be cute little outfits, now there's like G-string underwear on the mannequins. So they're really marketing to the sex trafficking victims, even though they're children. Same thing with like the nail shops. There's, the certain nail shops in certain areas, their main clientele are sex trafficking victims that are brought there by the pimps and traffickers. Same thing with some of the tattoo shops. Same thing with some of the taxi cabs, hotels. So there's also a lot of businesses that are engaged in facilitating this form of abuse, and they're profiting from it. So I've seen that. I've also seen businesses that are just like, get this out of in front of my business. This is affecting my business. I don't care who it is, children, adult, prostitute, whatever. I know it's impacting my business and I don't want to deal with it. So they kind of just don't want to deal with that at all. So I've really seen a mix of responses from the business community, but I think it really could be helpful for a business association to get involved, because what I've experienced over the years in so many ways is that people listen so much better to somebody who speaks their own language. So a business person speaks business language and they explain this to business people in business ways. And then later on, other people can have conversations about it where it's more, it's more open, but I just find that being able to inform a business association and have them advocate amongst businesses around getting involved in this issue is really important. And I'll just give you a quick example as a story. Had a girl that went into a restaurant on International. She was being chased by her pimp and he was trying to kill her. And she ran inside and she called me. And it was a Spanish-speaking business where they actually didn't speak English. And my mom is Puerto Rican, and so my mom got on the phone and talked to the business and had to explain to the business, like, please don't kick her out, please let her stay here, and someone's gonna come get her right away, or whatever. So even on that level, like training for businesses that are in high prostitution areas to understand too, that you may have a victim that runs into your business running from a trafficker. And when that happens, what do? She was so lucky, that business actually did let her stay in after my mom talked to them. And then Covenant House, which is one of our street outreach teams, they came and got her because she wouldn't go with the police. She was too scared. So she wouldn't let us call the police, but she went with them. And they were able to take her to the shelter, and then she was able to, get connected from there. But it's an example of how businesses are, can be right in the middle of this and involved in this.
Yeah, and really quick, just to add on, that story that Nola told about the girls running into businesses happens. I've heard that story dozens and dozens of times, and oftentimes the businesses are absolutely locking the girls out or kicking them out, even when they're 14 or 15 years old. But I've had some really amazing experiences with businesses as well, and just to reiterate the partnership aspect of it, the San Antonio Park business community partnered with us to close down the other business at 17th Avenue International Hotel. And so I think it's just really, individuals, again, going back to once they really understand the heart of the issue, and that it's not just a quality of life issue, and it's not just prostitutes hanging out in front of their business, I'm inclined to believe that they'll all be on the same page with us.
Okay. Thank you. For Luia, discuss the cultural issues that affect Southeast Asian or Cambodian girls in their recovery.
Cultural issues, Southeast Asian, the recovery. So, it's definitely difficult. As I mentioned earlier, there's a generation gap. You have first generation refugees, and then you have American-born Southeast Asian. And then now we're in our third generation as well. The third generation are raised by the 1.5 refugees who were born in Southeast Asia and then were raised in the U.S. So it's definitely difficult, we always have to kind of, as I mentioned earlier, we talk to the parents, and because I don't speak Cambodian, I really relied on Cambodian elder women who is respected in the community. And so I'm looking for, more elder allies, because the thing too is like, I'm not a parent, I'm young, and so when I go in to talk to these parents, they're looking at me like, who the heck are you? You have no right to tell me how to raise my daughter or how to be there for them. But really, you know, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times the reaction is like, I want to disown them, you know, because they betrayed me, I don't want to take care of their child. And it's real, you know, it's really real. Like, I could imagine how I think about how I would act if, you know, I had a daughter and I learned about this, you know, I learned about her situation. But, you know, like really just talking them through, like, this is what's happening, painting the bigger picture for them, and letting them know, like, actually, this is a time where they really, really need you. Like, they need you to take care of their daughter. And you have to understand that there's more risk if she was to, quote unquote, like, leave her pimp, right? Everybody was saying how that there's a big risk, and it's not as easy as like, oh, they just quit today or they just quit tomorrow. Like, it's not that easy. And so really explaining to the parents about that process, and how like this is a process. It's not just like a yes or no, I'm gonna end it now or tomorrow. And I wouldn't say it's like too much of a cultural thing. I think it's just like cultural differences. It's also that because our first generation, they live in isolation, like they don't speak English, and so they don't really know what's going on. You know, a lot of the conversations are held in English. So really just being able to talk to them in the language and their language, and have allies that can really understand where I'm coming from, you know, when I'm trying to explain all this. So it's kind of like, you know, what Nola said, you know, you need a business person to talk to another business person. In this case, you need like someone who speaks the language, and then also somebody who understands both sides.
Thank you. This is a really meaty one. What are some basic words, actions, or initiative I can take when I am seeing a sexually exploited victim? If I see a pimp or am approached by a pimp, when I talk to the victim, what should I do?
All right, so, you know, let's start with the fact that it's kind of like when you're on the airplane and the flight attendant tells you that if the cabin pressure goes down, the first thing is you have to take care of yourself before you put someone else's mask on. So the first thing that I'm going to encourage all of you to do is keep yourself safe, right? Because if you're not safe, you can't be saving her. And so if it's a situation where you're teaching or you're a doctor or a nurse and you're encountering this girl and she's already removed from her pimp, then of course, you know, go ahead, attempt the rescue on your own, that's fine. However, if we're talking about a street level situation, or a situation at a motel or a restaurant or something like that, where she's actively with her pimp and you see him, you know, assaulting her or just talking in a way that you know what the relationship is, because that happens a lot, especially at Burger King for some reason, you know, because it's so close to the track, I think. But we have citizens call in all the time and say, hey, this does not look right. She looks like she's about 14 or 15 years old. They're having a conversation and an argument about money. He's saying that if she doesn't get back out there and make X amount of money, she's not going to eat, etc. And so my advice is going to be that if you see an active situation like that going on, you should call 911. And I say 911 clearly because a lot of people call the non-emergency number. So in my opinion, if you see a child being exploited by a pimp, it's an emergency. So please call 911. I mean, that's really what I would say to do, and then just be a good witness, because it's an active crime. And it's just as dangerous as trying to get involved in any other active crime. I just can't downplay the importance and the volatility of that type of a situation. And so really it's just get good descriptions, get to a place where you can continue to observe what's going on and report all of it. And that's really my advice to you.
Now, if you see that same child on the street and you don't see a pimp immediately there engaging with her, assaulting her, encouraging her to go out on the street, you won't be able to call 911. You might look at the child and say, from what you understand and know, identify the child as being commercially sexually exploited, but it's not necessarily going to be a 911 call. 911 calls are for crimes that are in progress. I just want to clarify that because I don't want you to be disappointed. There's another line, it's a city line, and you can call that line and press 2. It's a city of Oakland number. I don't have, maybe your group can get this number. It's the City of Oakland number that you call to report. It's a 777 number. Shoot, I wish you don't know. You call to report fireworks and prostitution.
Right, but that's not going to be
No, it's not, but I'm giving them an alternative. So if it's a crime in progress, you can call 911. But if it's not a crime in progress and you just see a girl out there that you think is being exploited and you're seeing this girl in the same area or other children in these areas on an ongoing basis, there's another city number that you can call, and I believe you press 2, and you can leave an anonymous message. You don't even have to leave your name if you don't want to, and say, you know, every Monday through Thursday at this time, I'm seeing, you know, what I'm identifying as, and, you know, you can give that information, and when they get enough, you know, calls, so it has to be a community effort. So this is definitely effective when there's girls you're seeing in a certain area. But, you know, to be honest, if you just see a girl out there that you think is being exploited, there's no people involved, and it's a single girl, I don't know that there's a number that you can call that's going to go out there and respond at that moment.
The number is 777-3333. The non-emergency number is the most appropriate number to use for the situation Nola is describing, because I agree that if it's not an active situation, then it's not an emergency. We don't want to leave it on a tip line. The tip line is more for, you know, abatement type calls and abatement issues. If you see a girl and she looks underage, please don't call the tip line and leave a recorded message, because sometimes those aren't checked. Because when I was in the Vice Unit, I was responsible for checking those, and sometimes we don't check those for several days. And so if you see a girl who's under 18 actively engaging in what you believe is prostitution activity, please call the non-emergency number, 777-3333. If you see a situation that rises to the level of an emergency where there's an active pimp working her at that moment, call 911. So I hope that's a little bit more clear.
Can you tell folks, Holly, what they can expect when they call the non-emergency number?
Well, for all of us who've been Oakland residents for a while, you guys all know that it depends on the call volume for the evening. I mean, and so the response times are dictated by what else is going on over in the city, right? But I mean, so I mean, it could take 20 minutes or it could take hours. You know, we've all been victims of various things, right?
But for instance, you need to be like at your home location when they can come take a report. So say you're like in your car on your cell phone and you see it, you're just going to report it on that line, but they're not going to need to come out or anything like that.
No. I mean, you can do it just like you can report any crime anonymously. You don't have to leave your name. You don't even have to leave your cell phone number if you don't want to. You just let the dispatcher know the location and the description the best that you can.
And if you're not calling law enforcement at all, but you're just seeing a girl out there and you're wondering, like, should I be connecting with these children or talking to them or etc., I would caution you that even if you don't see a pimp, there's a good chance that a pimp is watching. And even if a pimp's not watching, there's a good chance that the pimp has other girls out there that are watching this girl. So I wouldn't suggest you like try to do a direct outreach. You can certainly give her eye contact because they feel very invisible, like nobody sees them. You can give her a kind smile. You know, so there's definitely things you can do to make that connection, but I wouldn't recommend trying to do direct outreach because sometimes it puts them in further danger, and it can certainly put you in further danger. Okay. No, well, I don't want to give it the wrong thing. I got my spiel came from Kevin Whiteley.
The cell 911 number is 777-3211. So that's important to note, is that you get 911, you dial 911 from your cell phone, you get the layout. Okay? So 777-3211 is cell phone 911. 777-3211 is the cell phone 911.
And the hotline that Nola was originally referring to is 238-2373. 238-2373. Now that's not a live line, right? That's a recording. So that's just for, you know, hey, there's prostitution activity every day at this location. Okay.
And talking in terms of calls to the non-emergency line, that may well be useful if in fact you wait and get an incident number and record it, time, date, incident number. And if in fact further you have any number of people that are doing the same thing. We see a girl that's 15, 16 on the corner of 17th and International. She's there every day at 4 o'clock, and there's 10 calls that come in on that exact with that exact description. Then you've got, if in fact we're all linked with incident numbers, then in fact we've got some real evidence that can be used. Now, probably to the last question. How can healthcare providers of your children, teens, and families recognize exploited and at-risk youth, kids and youth, And then what do you do? And secondly, what can be done to decrease the demand for buying sex from young kids? How can we educate / shame / dissuade / heal the Johns?
Yes. So in regards to the healthcare provider, as I mentioned, we also do trainings. So if there are doctors or nurses that are really interested in the protocol, we can actually get Dr. Kim Chang out, and also Dr. Aisha Mead, who's definitely open to this as well. And so, that's a possibility. And so I think like whoever asked that question, there's definitely a lot of opportunities for this to go really far. Right now, we're working with West Coast to develop a statewide protocol for not just physical health, but also mental health practitioners as well. So there's like a whole protocol that we do the training on. It's signs to look out for, questions to ask, what do you do after if they respond positively or negatively to that. There's a resource grid you could refer to. So definitely it's a very well developed protocol. The second question, sorry.
Symptoms.
What can be done to decrease demand for buying sex from young kids? How can we educate / shame / dissuade / heal the Johns?
I'm going to add to the health question first. Dr. Aisha Mays, as well from the Native American Health Center, is partnering with Missy to do research with survivors of sex trafficking to find out about what they need in terms of health services, etc. So that's another way that the health community can become involved as well, is getting involved in that kind of research. But in terms of learning to identify and all of that, I think there's some training that's very specific for the medical community around identification and screening and so on. And so there's, Missy provides training, so you can contact us. Other organizations provide training. I, on an annual basis, do grand rounds at Children's Hospital Oakland, at Kaiser. We do this training series at Highland Hospital. So we also try to do a lot of training with the medical profession so that they can identify victims. But that is, I think it's a training. It's not just answering the question quickly here.
And also, if you're interested in looking at the protocol, it's available on Asian Health Services' website as well as on Display. So you just enter your name and your email address, and they will send you the protocol.
Okay, Sharon, you got?
Can you ask the second part of that question? We want to answer it.
Right. Second part. Right.
Yeah, about the Johns and something else.
What can be done to decrease demand for buying sex from young kids? How can we educate, shame, dissuade, heal the Johns?
What's the first part of the question again? I'm sorry.
What can be done to decrease the demand for buying sex from young kids?
Okay, so definitely I would agree with what was already said by the ladies before me. It's legislation. So if we want to decrease the demand, then we have to have laws that are much stronger, and they cause much more pain and suffering for individuals that are buying sex. And there's a few places you can hit people. You can hit them in their pockets. You can take away their freedom. There's things that are effective. They already showed through research that like doing Dear John letters, that doing billboard campaigns and all of that, it doesn't really deter them. That the main thing that will deter them is going to jail, and not for a day. So I think really we need legislation that takes a much stronger stance and really needs to. The problem is that prostitution in general has been seen as a victimless crime, even though that's illegal too. So human trafficking is not just illegal. Prostitution and buying sex in general is illegal because a human life is worth more than $1 can pay for. And so I think just period, to value human life, we know that prostitutes, no matter what age they are now, even that 35-year-old cracked out prostitute on San Pablo, on average they entered at the age of 12. That's all individuals in the commercial sex industry. So being that, we should have much stronger response to individuals buying sex when we know that on average the person they're buying sex from was a victimized child that's been engaged since the age of 12. So our whole response, doesn't reflect what we're learning now. And I don't think we really knew this until we start focusing on child sex trafficking. I think some of us knew it, but we didn't know it the way we know it now. So I think legislation definitely has to call for a stronger response. Law enforcement are very limited with what they can do. in terms of arresting Johns. So we might have different opinions, like, well, they're not arresting Johns because Johns aren't just, street people, they're doctors and lawyers and this and that. And does some of that go on? Yes, most definitely. Yes, that goes on with people in every profession pulling favoritisms towards other people or, doing elitism and all that. So yeah, there's cops that do that too. That's nothing new. But across the board, if they had more authority to be able to arrest Johns, I'm sure they would. That's what they do. They arrest people that are breaking the law. But you would be surprised, and I just really, from our experience at Post, me and Holly and some other law enforcement officers and advocates from around the state have been working on a human trafficking training video for law enforcement, and in doing the scenarios we're acting out, I was amazed at how limited. I'm like, well, you can't arrest them now? We'll arrest them now. We're acting out, they're like, no, Nola, we can't arrest them, no. Just because, we caught him in the car with this 14-year-old in a dark alley in a parking lot, no. We have to have, so it's much more difficult than I think we think as the average citizen. So the cops they're like soldiers. They just have marching orders. They don't have like big authority. And even your average prosecutor, they're also under marching orders, right? But the legislation and the laws can give them better marching orders so that they can do their job better. And so I think it's really about legislation. It's not even about enforcement to me at this point, because the enforcement, no matter what, the laws aren't strong enough to support the enforcement. So we can do stuff, we're kind of spinning our wheels. It needs to come from a legislative perspective.
I would disagree that I think that it should be more punitive. I know years ago when I was a baby DA starting out, in Oakland they used to take people's cars, and then there was a lawsuit. I'm not sure who initiated the lawsuit, and they found that was inappropriate to do. But I had cases, where how is the husband going to explain that to the wife when the car's not there? Yeah. I think in terms of having conversations about, the Johns, I think we have to have more dialogues involving men and women. It's not just a women issue. It's an issue for all of us because it does affect, it affects all of us. And so I think we have to, it's not so much as shaming them, but it's a conversation about why is this happening? Why is this so socially acceptable? I've seen cases where there was one man who was, I think, in his 50s purchasing sex from a 15-year-old, and he had a truck with a cab, and he had a mattress in the back of his truck. And he said that this was the girl that he frequented at least once a week. How is that socially acceptable when you're 50 and this is a child? Who looks like a child, even with the eyelashes, the makeup, the outfits, clearly a child. So I think we have to have conversations where we're open and willing to talk about why this is acceptable and alternatives.
Absolutely, I have to agree with what both the ladies have said so far. And just to reiterate, sometimes the feeling of powerlessness in dealing with Johns and the law. We run operations all the time that are specifically targeted at Johns. That is why I put female police officers, and I used to put myself out there posing and risking my life on a daily basis to attract Johns. We run operations that are specifically targeted at Johns, and we've arrested cops, and we've arrested doctors, we've arrested a judge, and we've arrested business owners, and we've arrested everyone. We arrest them. That's not the question. The question is really what happens after they're arrested. And so the legislation absolutely has to be changed. And speaking more to what Ms. Madden is saying is the conversations need to start from the time that we have children in this country, right? And without trying to get too philosophical, we are training boys specifically to believe that this is an option, that women's bodies are for sale, and that this is an option. And so those conversations that she's speaking of, I 100% agree with need to happen from the time that the boys are born and from the time that the girls are born. The whole American culture right now, we need to look at ourselves as far as the over-sexualization of women. We're absolutely using women and girls to sell everything, right? Women, sexy women are selling hamburgers and cars and phones and ridiculous things. So all of those things are the things we need to be more socially conscious about if we're going to affect this at the right level, and that's what I want to say. And one more thing, I appreciate Ms. Brantley's, belief that the police are strong and we're like soldiers, but I do think that that's an important issue to me, especially here now in Oakland and within the Oakland Police Department, with everything that you all know that we've been struggling with, including court reforms and all of those things for 10 years. We're really at a point where we need to change that, and so we're public servants. And so we're not soldiers or an occupying army. We don't want to be viewed like that anymore. But I do appreciate the
Hey, I call my staff soldiers of love, so it's a term of endearment for hardworking people.
No, I understand. But you all understand the complexity complexities that we're dealing with at OPD. So I just want to say we're public servants, and if the legislation is changed because of the public and because of what all of you do, we will be more than happy to move forward with those arrests and locking those Johns up for a long, long time, right? Yes.
Yeah. Can I ask a very concrete question? When you say legislation, as you know, I'm married to the mayor. Could the city of Oakland do this? In other words, do we need the state to act, or can we do it here?
We definitely need the state, and I would even say we need, really a national response, but we need the state because of the nature of the trafficking. The traffickers and the children cross several jurisdictions, and in just talking to District Attorney O'Malley today, she was saying it's definitely something we need to take from a statewide level.
Okay.
So, and also, as I understand, if we had an Oakland Municipal Code, it can't be any more punitive than the penal code that we have, which governs crime throughout the state. So when I'm in court and I'm looking at a crime, we have enumerated maximums in terms of the fine, in terms of the time, and that's what really governs what I do in court. So if the penalty is higher at the state level, then that could also affect what I can do in court. So that's why, as part of our 5-pronged program, we do work with legislators. We have an internal legislative committee that can propose changes. But as citizens here, you all can be involved in that. You can propose legislation. You can work with us or work with other organizations that are doing it. If there's something that you're passionate about, your voice can definitely be heard on this issue.
Let me just editorialize real quick, and that is that, and it was touched on by Holly in terms of men. If you look around, the majority here are women. Obviously, the 4 here are women, and that's part of us, our job as men, to educate men about what this situation is all about. So I have to point that out. You look around, it's probably 60%, if not more, women right here. And it just shows the kind of dedication that the women have, that the men need to really work to match. And we should. We have to do that. So let me just say that we need to give them just a wondrous round of applause for this. Sharon?
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here and sharing all that really important stuff for us. And as Jose said, the main reason we do this program is because we want to consider what we can do as an organization. And so the dialogue has only begun. We are going to, oh, sorry. Mike, I need the mic. Keep your voice. We're going to have a very short business meeting, and the business consists of announcements of some important things that we're going to be doing. Would you like to help share this part?
I'm sure.
So, of course, we would...
Short break.
Would you like to have a short 5-minute break? Okay, let's do that, but please don't everybody leave. We want to tell you about the things we're doing in the next couple of weeks. And I know we're going to lose everybody if we have a break. The announcements are going to take about 15 or 20 minutes because we want to involve you in what we're talking about.
It'll be quicker than that. It'll be quicker.
Okay, Mary, you can do it quicker. Okay, Mary promised. Mary is the main person to do the announcements, and she just promised me to do it quicker. So if you'll agree to hang in here with us, we'd really appreciate it. And I'm going to help Mary by giving things out as she talks about them.
No, don't say.
Okay, I have 2 announcements I want to make, and I won't use a lot of your time. But we don't want to lose people because we need volunteers for 2 upcoming events. My name is Mary Fortain. The first one item I'm going to talk about, how many of you know about on Wednesday, January 15th, which happens to be Martin Luther King's birthday, that we are having out in District 7 with East Oakland area, we are having a jobs fair. How many people even know about that? Okay, so I'll speak to the choir to you people, but I still need you here, and the rest of you, I'll give you some information. Sharon is handing out flyers about, there are flyers back on the table for this jobs fair. This jobs fair is to bring jobs or hire people for the Foothill Square, which is opening up hopefully in March or April this year. It's going to have a new grocery store. Kroger's is going to have a Foods Co. grocery store there, and it's going to be hiring 150 people. We are very hopeful that these hires are going to come from Oakland, specifically East Oakland and West Oakland. So on the 15th, Wednesday the 15th, at Allen Temple Church in East Oakland, we are going to have a jobs fair. Yes? And the people, the Foods Co. is going to have representatives there. Applications are going to be available for people to complete either online or they can fill them out. Also, as I said, there's going to be 150 positions that they're going to be hiring for. Also, Ross, Dress for Less will be there. Wells Fargo will be there, and Lennon's will be there. All of these businesses are going to be opening up in March or April of this year. And so we really need to get people out for this job fair. So again, the job fair is Wednesday, January 15th. In the morning at 10 o'clock, let's see, at 10 o'clock there's actually going to be a job preparedness workshop for 2 hours where people can come and get help on preparing resumes. Then at 1 o'clock, 1 to 4:30 is the actual job fair where there'll be representatives from each of those companies there to take applications and to complete those. So what we need are volunteers to help. We believe that we're going to have excellent turnout that day. And so we need people to volunteer for BBBON or anyone else. It is a work day, Wednesday, because the actual holiday is on Monday, January 20th. But if you're going to be off or willing to take the time to be off, we need help. We need a lot of help on that day. Sharon is walking around and Rich, I guess, with a sign-in sheet. Please put your name, your email, and if you're available. I am actually speaking for Cheryl Walton. She has been leading this campaign, but she's in Atlanta right now. I'll go to the second announcement, and then if we have any questions, please, I hope I can answer them. The second item, how many of you know that on MLK Day, yes, Howard, I know you know, on MLK Day, which is January 20th, how many of you know that we're having also a cleanup in District 7? Raise your hand. Okay, great. So I'm speaking to the choir for you people, and for the rest of you, listen up. We again need your help on that day. We need volunteers. So BBBON District 7 has been working very hard to clean up an area that's basically looks like a dump. Every 2 weeks, the Public Works Organization basically goes out there and it gets C-Fix Clicks calls about the dumping in this area. So we are looking to do a cleanup, and there are flyers in the back. If you need flyers, if you need to tell people about this, please pick up flyers for both of these events. Again, that's on Monday, January 20th. It'll start at 9 o'clock. We need, I would say, at least 15 to 20 volunteers to help out on that day. Volunteers should show up about 8:30, 8:45. We need them for things like signing people up handing out tubes. We plan to block off the street. Well, I didn't give the location. It's on G Street. It's near San Leandro Boulevard. It's on G Street between 86 and 92nd Avenues in East Oakland. And you would, your flyer says exactly where we're going to meet. And basically, we're going to be picking up trash, litter. I drove by there today. It was just, it was just unbelievable.
Yeah, good.
And actually, I've been working very closely with Public Works, and they're going to be coming through either Friday or Saturday before, just to pick up the big items. And when I say big items, I'm talking about sofas, chairs, mattresses, dead animals, okay? But after they do that, the amount of litter that is left there there's enough work for 100 people easily in that area. So again, on this sheet that Sharon is passing around, we need volunteers to come out and help, and you'll get to assignments. Okay, Floyd. Not everyone has to pick up litter either. We need people to